Thank you, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order, October 11th City Council meeting. My name is Val Gilman. I'm the Ward 4 City Councilor, and I'm also the City Council President.
Progress.
In the interest of government transparency with regards to deliberations and decisions made by the City Council and according to open meeting law, since this meeting was posted as a Zoom meeting, this meeting is recorded by video and audio and will be conducted by remote participation. In additionally, all votes taken by the City Council during this and future remote meetings will be by roll call vote. If you're calling in on a phone, and you can press *9 to request to speak. If you're watching on a computer or device, there is a raised hand button that you can tap or press to speak. Please use either of these options during oral communications. We also have a non-discrimination statement from the City Council. It reads as follows. It's the finding of the City of Gloucester that no individual should be denied equal treatment or opportunity because of their age, ancestry, color, disability, including intellectual and developmental mental disability, family status, immigration status, gender identity or expression, military status, marital status, national origin, race, religion, sex, or sexual orientation. In this vein, we as city councilors do not condone language that is discriminatory or offensive and will not accept it at city council meetings. I'd like to announce the names of the city councilors who are on the call right now. First of all, we have Jason Grow at large, Tony Gross at large, Sean Nolan, Ward 5 Vice Chair. We have Tracy O'Neill, Ward 2 City Councilor. Tracy is blacked out right now, but I'm sure she'll be back on in a second. Jeff Worthley is at large, and Councilor O'Hara is at large. I think that is all councilors, with the exception of Councilor Memard is not here yet. I'd also like to introduce John Dunn, who is our CFO, Grace Poirier, who is our Assistant City Clerk, and she's filling in for Joanne Sinos tonight. Welcome, Grace. Thank you. We have Kenny Coster, who is our auditor, and we have our mayor, Greg Verga, on the call. And I think that is it for now. So what I'd like to do, councilors, is I would like to rearrange our business right now, and I would like to begin tonight's meeting with a moment of silence. And the moment of silence is for Greg's mom, our mayor's mom, Adrienne Verga. She passed away on September 27th at 84 years old. Adrienne was born on March 24th, 1938. She graduated from St. Anne's High School, class of 56, and she was the class secretary. She met her husband, former state rep Tony Verga, at age 15 at St. Anne's. Many remember her at Our Lady of Good Voyage, where she served for 40 years as a receptionist for Father Alves. She helped translate for Portuguese-speaking parishioners. She was a loving and devoted mother. She raised 8 great children and helped raise her grandchildren. She was always willing to lend them a hand. She is survived by her husband, Tony, of 65 years, and children Mick, Jean Marie, Peter, Anthony, Matthew, Kevin, Stephen, and her youngest son, Mayor Greg Verga, and his wife, Kelly. 14 grandchildren and 5 great-grandchildren, and many daughter-in-laws, son-in-laws, friends, nieces, and nephews. Our thoughts and prayers are with Mayor Verga and his entire family during this difficult time. May you rest in peace, Adrienne Verga. You made our community a better place with the love that you had for your family and the community. So let's take a moment of silence just to remember Adrienne Verga. Thank you. First order of business, Madam Clerk.
Oral communications.
Great, and I'd just like to recognize Councilor Majota is on the call. He's our Ward 3 City Councilor. So our City Clerk just said that the first matter is oral communications. The public shall have the opportunity at every regularly scheduled meeting to be heard under oral communications on matters not appearing on the agenda. Oral communications shall allow any resident who has a request or complaint of any nature relative to city business to appear before the council, state their problem without debate, and the matter shall be referred to the proper agency through the office of the mayor. The resident will be notified within a 2-week period relative to the disposition of same, and a copy shall be forwarded to the city council. Persons speaking under oral communications shall be limited to 3 minutes each. The council president shall not allow complaints as to individual performance. Would anyone that is on the call like to speak in public comments for up to 3 minutes for matters not on the agenda? I see LJ. I believe that's Lisa Rigsby, if I'm not mistaken. Would you introduce yourself, and you have up to 3 minutes?
Counselor, there was someone ahead of LJ who I let in.
Okay, that's fine. So the person ending in 9394, you're on the call. If you can unmute yourself and introduce yourself and your address. If you're calling in on a phone, you can hit *9. Any other thoughts, Madam Clerk?
I don't, unless it was unintentional for this person to have raised their hands. It might have been a technical error. I don't know, other than what you suggested, which is *9.
Okay, so why don't we take the second person that had her hand raised? And if 9394 wants to try again, we will call you and allow you to speak out of order without objection. So LJ, I think you are Lisa Rigsby. Would you introduce yourself, your address, and you have up to 3 minutes to speak to our city council.
Hi, thank you so much. Just extending my condolences to Mayor Verga and family. I live at 3 Taylor Court, and I have 2 points this evening. One is regarding the discussion on the MBTA community guidelines. I'm assuming it's not on the consent agenda for this evening.
No, you can speak to us.
I attended the your last meeting when you discussed that, and I understand it's just an enormous amount of information to take in. I completely agree with Mr. Jack Clark's recent op-ed. And I stated this a lot during the recent proposed zoning amendments, that we really need to have a master plan. And I really believe that to be or not to be an MBTA community with these important zoning changes should come after the plan. And I know that we're working on the CIP, but that could be several year process. I heard, during the discussion, getting the best result for Gloucester, using outside consultants and experts, are using, working with our administration and departments and trusting the process. But the thing that was so painfully absent was any inclusion about our community, especially the people who live in the area that will be most impacted by this. And, those are the key stakeholders, as well as other groups like our, open spaces, our climate coalition, our climate action Coalition and our historical society, but really the people who live in the neighborhoods. And it's not a criticism, but I think it's a call to action and an opportunity to really work with groups in a format that isn't just holding, a public forum where people weigh in. So that's what I wanted to say. And the other thing is that, as I understood it, we were to receive an update on the ARPA fund distribution at the end of the summer. And maybe I've missed something, but I'm hoping that we have some update in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Anyone else like to speak in public comments for matters not on the agenda? Philip Story. Madam Clerk, could you bring Philip in? I think Phil, if I'm not mistaken, Philip is up for a appointment, so he's probably not meaning to dial in for public comments right now, but we can keep him in for now. Unless, Philip, if you're here for public comments in addition to your appointment, you
No,
can.
I'm not.
Okay,
Can you hear me
great.
now?
Thank you. Okay, that's fine. So you can just put yourself back on mute and just, we'll be with you shortly.
Okay, very good. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else like to speak to the council for matters not on the agenda? Seeing none, I just wanted to mention that it doesn't look like Councilor Memard is on the call. And I know we were expecting him. So hopefully he's not having technical difficulties. So public comment is now over. And I'd like to ask our city clerk to call the next item on the agenda.
Regarding hybrid meeting options, venues, and a possible city council vote.
Madam Clerk, your audio is messed up again. And I know that you made some improvements in making sure that it was going to work for the next call. Could you try to just speak that, say that one more time?
Can you hear me?
Not really.
I don't have another computer. The city clerk and the court committees, their computers with them today. So I'm working with the one that has not been replaced yet.
Okay, so so you did have a remediation plan, but we don't have the new computer. Okay, I understand. So I'll come back to you. Maybe you can speak in a different angle because there were times where we could hear you. So I will call the first order of business, which is the city council update regarding hybrid meeting options, venues, and possible city council vote. When we were here at our last meeting, we had a very thorough presentation from Ryan Knowles, our IT director, and Jill Cahill also spoke, our CAO. It was my action item to send an email to the superintendent to find out the possibilities of 2 true hybrid locations in the schools. One was the O'Malley Learning Commons, and the second was the small auditorium at Gloucester High. After doing that, our superintendent and I had a conversation on Friday, and it was confirmed that neither was an option that would be ahead of the city council being able to move into Kairos, as Ryan said, probably in the February timeframe. So we had to pause on that, and I wanted to report that back to all of you. And I have a couple of thoughts that I wanted to mention, and then I'll ask Mayor Verger if he wants to speak to them, because they do have, they are linked to the administration in many ways. But my thoughts at this point, and typically I'm the last to speak, but this is kind of an initiative that I brought up because I felt that we should be talking about this. So I will start by just sharing with all of you that almost every person I speak to in the community, the first thing they say when they see me is, when are we going to get back in person? And it doesn't matter who the person is. It's people of all wards, of all professions, and they are just asking us when we're going to be doing that. So I think that this conversation is timely. So after hearing this, one of the options that Superintendent Lummis suggested was maybe the council wanted to repeat and mirror what the school committee has been doing. And that is, they're having quasi-hybrid meetings in the library at Gloucester High. And that type of meeting would be exactly what we were doing at the Sawyer Free Library in May and June when we experimented with this. So that would mean we would be able to have a meeting where we are all present and members of the public continue to hybrid in to participate in public hearing comments and public comments. He said that we could do that without any problems, with hardly any additional issues, except for trying to make sure that we could all get onto the Wi-Fi for Gloucester schools. So we would have to make sure that we could dial into that. So, so he basically said that the room is ours if we want that. And my thought was we could transition, we could get back to doing that beginning November 9th, which is a Wednesday. It's a different date because of the election. And then we would have another meeting in November. Where are my notes here? Where the heck are my notes? Hold on. So we'd have one meeting on November 9th, one meeting on November 22nd, December 13th. We only have one meeting in December. January 10th, 2023, January 24th, 2023. And then we would be merging into the time where we believe that Kairos will be fully ready for us to get back into a true hybrid. And to define true hybrid, it's a meeting in venues that are large enough to accommodate any interested member of the public. In addition to our council, allow them to participate in public comments and hearings, watch the presentation on a large screen, and giving the public a similar Zoom option to dial in remotely, participate in public comments, hearings, and having these meetings available for all to view the next morning on Zoom, as we are currently doing right now. So that is an option. And to repeat, option one would be to begin on November 9th for 5 meetings at Gloucester High School Library with a semi-hybrid format, just like the school committee. And then go back to Kairos in person for true hybrid the beginning of February, assuming that the technology will be all set to go. Obviously, it's predicated in any issues that we confront. The second option would be that we just don't bother with that interim, and that we wait until true hybrid is ready in Kairos for hopefully the second week in February. Could be sooner, but it's most likely going to be about that much time. And then the second thing we'll need to talk about when we determine this is the standing committee meetings, getting back to a true hybrid model. So Mayor Verga, do you have anything to add? Did anything not sound clear that I presented based on what you heard from Superintendent Lummis and talking to Ryan today, Grant, Harris? Is there anything to add?
Yes. First of all, if I may, I want to thank everybody for the moment of silence for a mother. And the ARPA announcements would have happened sooner, but I was a bit distracted the last week and a half or so. So hopefully this week we'll have some ARPA information for you. Value said any issues we might confront. November 9th is a school committee meeting, so this is your first issue you're confronting, that you'll be competing with us for the space. But yes, I did speak to the superintendent today, and I spoke to Ryan. The hope I had is that the space at the O'Malley Library, which we had used for one meeting a few weeks back, would be a space that would fit some people in the room, you know, the public, and it is a Zoom space. Turns out there's a lot more tech involved than I thought. It's not plug and play. So your idea that you mentioned, and we discussed in my office earlier, of doing this hybrid light a la the school committee is, I think, a great way to get started. Anything we do to do interim measures at the high school library or the O'Malley Library is going to take away from the project that Ryan's working on for Rose Baker, the conference room at City Hall, and Kairou's, and a couple other locations at Rose Baker conference rooms. So I would recommend we let him focus on that. And if you guys want to get into doing what we're doing on the school committee, I think it's a great idea. There's an expectation that board members are meeting in person to the extent possible. We recently sent out a memo, which you guys were copied on, I believe, in your last meeting. We sent this memo to all of the non-regulatory boards and commissions, giving them the option to continue with Zoom or to meet in person without Zoom. And some chose each way. But the expectation I have for the meeting in person is they're expected to meet in person. You know, we can have some meeting in person and some coming in remote. There are remote participation rules that came into be. Well, I was on the city council 10 or so years ago. My view is that if we indeed go back to in person, we need to revert to the original rules. It can't be we just keep Zooming because it's easy to do. There are exceptions that the remote participation was created for. So that being said, the work continues. We're working on yet another MOU, this time between the city and 1623 Studios, about who's going to do what and what's actually expected of each side. Nothing really exists that we can find in writing in a formal way of what our expectation is from our partner at 1623. But we're hoping that they can provide the people power to run the meetings, as well as the equipment, cameras, and sound equipment. We do provide broadband service to their studio in the Browns Mall. And Ryan Knowles believes that they would be able to run the meetings remotely. They don't have to necessarily be in the balcony at City Hall like they used to be. So once we get the equipment in place and we're all set up, we can get to the true hybrid, which is, you know, the boards meeting in person. People come into the meeting in person, come into the podium in person to speak at oral communications, as well as allowing for the public to watch the meeting live and to Zoom in for oral communications. So that's the goal. We don't know what's going to happen in March when the current mulligan on these remote meetings comes up for another discussion at the legislature. But I think it's smart for the city to be prepared with a full hybrid option in place for all of our regulatory boards, as well as the city council and the school committee. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer to the extent possible.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. Anyone have any questions on what Mayor Verga just summarized? Councilor Grow.
Is there a particular reason why members of the public couldn't attend the library or other facilities that we have in terms of a meeting?
So I will answer that. So the answer to that is that the law, the open meeting law, requires a room to be large enough to accommodate any member of the public that wishes to attend. And there are a lot of bookcases there, a lot of obstacles, and if 50 or so people wanted to attend, we would not be able to accommodate them. And that in itself would basically put that meeting on hold. That would not be able to be conducted. Any other councilors want to add to that? Mayor Verga or?
I just want to sort of piggyback on what you said, because that's why I was kind of hoping the O'Malley Library would be a way to go, because it's basically tables that could be slid out of the way. The high school, it'd be a lot of setup, moving bookshelves just to accommodate some chairs. But that's why I think if you guys started in the library, either of them, we could see where it goes from there. But I think doing anything in this stopgap measure, short of just meeting you guys in person, it just takes away from the goal line we have for Rose Baker and City Hall. So that's kind of it. I hope that answers your question, Jason.
Any other questions to Mayor Verga? Council Worthley. Council Worthy, you are on mute.
Sorry.
And I just wanted
Happens
to
to the best of
welcome
us.
Council Memard. He's here.
Thank you, Mayor Berger, Chairman Gilman. I
Hold
hear
on.
delayed.
Council Memard, can you mute yourself because we're getting some echoing?
I've been having a little technical crazy period here for the
I
last half
figured
hour.
that was the problem because you never miss meetings.
I couldn't get in on my iPad or my city device. And so I've been listening to you by phone, and I was the 9394 number that Grace
Okay.
is trying to recognize.
Well, right. Oh, it is.
Here,
Oh, wow. You were
hi.
trying. Good for you. So there's no longer any interference. So as long as your dog is quiet, we should be able to keep you right like you are right now. So let's go back to Council Worthley.
I just want to say thank you, Madam Chair and
Yes.
Mayor. I appreciate that. So I'm not a technological person. I struggle, with every sort of technology. I think everyone knows that. But I'm trying to understand something. What would prevent us from just bringing our laptops to a place that's open to the public? And we participate via Zoom with anybody who's logged in that way, and we look across the table and talk to one another when that happens. I feel like on one hand, we're looking for sort of like the Cadillac version, which I think is awesome at some point, but we can all just be sitting around a table with our laptops and have people come to the room. I don't feel like that takes a lot of wiring. It doesn't take a lot of money. I don't know. Please.
Okay, I'll let Mayor Verga take that. Go ahead.
No, I hear you, Jeff, that, waiting for the Cadillac may not seem like the best way, but I think we also don't want to get the Yugo. And I thought, like you, that I am a tech guy, and I thought it was a plug and play opportunity. But after speaking to Ryan, who had spent the days, had a conversation with Grant Harris, his counterpart on the school side, it really is more set up than that. It can't, as you know, I don't know if you've watched any school committee meetings, they're very exciting, so you should watch them.
I have.
But we do have our laptop set up around the room, as well as the central camera that gets the whole room. But yeah, I thought it was that simple, but it's really not. And just to make those interim steps to get it so it's okay, / workable, I don't think it's worth it taking the time away from getting to that Cadillac where we really wanted to be a long time ago, and where the state might tell us we have to be come March, or come April. So that's kind of where we are.
Okay. The second question I have is, we talk about the library at the high school. It's the stadium seating auditorium lecture hall. The council was there when I was in the council for a period of time. The city hall was condemned, and we had city council meetings there. We had our committee meetings there. There's plenty of parking, plenty of seating. Could that space work? Is that what we're talking about?
So I can go. You want to take that, Mayor Verga? Because I
I
talked
agree
to.
that would be an awesome room for this type of meeting, but it's not even set up for the Yugo version at this point. So it's just taken away from our end goal just to set up this room for a quick fix, and it won't be the full-fledged fix that we're after. It's something we should consider added to the list, because the stadium seating, I think, is ideal. But it's not ready for a quick fix at all. There's nothing, and not even the TV with a built-in camera. So we'd have a long way to go to get that. And as I say, every dollar spent on these interim measures and every minute spent working on them is time and money taken away from the end result we're trying to get to. And I know we've had I'm sure all of you have had the same conflicting requests that I've gotten, which is you guys can't get away from the Zoom meetings. We got to have them. It's participation's up. Then you got people saying, you got to go back to in-person meetings. What are you hiding from us? So until we're ready to get to the full hybrid version, I think it would be counterproductive to rip the Band-Aid off and go back to the old days pre-Zoom or stick with just Zoom.
I agree. I'm of the mindset that hybrid or nothing at this point. Not nothing, hybrid or Zoom.
Okay, anyone else have any questions before we, go ahead, Council O'Neill?
Thank you. Through the chair to Mayor Verga, I'd like to ask, the subcommittees and the, I guess just the subcommittees.
Do you mean the
how do
board?
they-
The
I'm
boards,
sorry?
do you mean the boards and commissions?
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The boards and commissions, they decide whether they're going to Zoom or not. Is that correct?
We gave the option to the non-regulatory boards. So things like cemetery committee or, that are totally advisory, but we did not give that option to things like planning board, zoning board of appeals, waterways board. I'm sure I'm missing something. Anybody that has to take a vote that creates
Board of Health?
Board of Health. Yeah. So they weren't given that option. So they're sort of in the same holding pattern that you guys are, and to some extent the school committee is.
Right, so I went down the list of the boards and commissions, and I was gonna pick out like which ones I'm interested in, because I can't go to every meeting, obviously, right? But I can watch them the day after or over the weekend or whatever. And so can I ask you one by one, or is that not acceptable? Like, I mean, EDIC and Fisheries Commission, Concom, I mean.
Well, I can tell you right off the bat, Fisheries Commission has not met at all during Zoom. They will,
Okay.
if they haven't already scheduled a meeting, I'm sure they're going to have a non-Zoom in-person meeting. Concom absolutely falls under regulatory. There's no way they're going to be meeting without having that component. So, we do have, I believe you guys got the list, but if not, we'll be sure that you get the list that corresponds with the memo that we sent to the chairs of those boards, just so you can see non-regulatory, regulatory. But you're right,
Okay.
the convenience of being able to scroll through was great, but it's a matter of some boards just haven't met because they didn't want to deal with the Zoom aspect. And it's also a lot of people power because every meeting has to be, for lack of a better word, managed by a city staff member. And in community development alone, I believe they have 18 boards and commissions under them. That's a lot of meetings for staff to attend after hours, and we do have to pay comp time. It's not free.
Right. Okay.
Does that help, Council O'Neill?
Yes,
But they do have to go
But
back
so-
to the old days of taking minutes and posting the minutes.
right. And that takes a while. I mean, the Zoom is immediate. So you'll send a memo that says the regulatory and non-regulatory?
Yeah,
And
I'm making a note of
the-
that now. Plus, I believe Pam's on the, Pam probably is your biggest fan. I think she's on most of your meetings right till the bitter end, but she's on the call, so she's probably jotting this down too. But I
Okay.
will.
Welcome Pam Toby to our meeting, our Director of Constituent Services and Communications. So to just confirm, the regulatory boards are Concom, Waterways, Board of Health, Planning Board, ZBA, and the School Committee.
In the city council and your standing committees. So I'm
Right.
sure I shouldn't say I'm sure, I suspect we may be missing one, but that's why we want to compile a list.
Okay, so that would be great. Are you set with your questions, Council O'Neill?
Yes, yeah, I guess. Would the people who have been doing Zoom continue to Zoom, or it depends? whatever they want.
Non-regulatory, non-regulatory boards were given the option. We sent an email to all of the chairs and asked them to poll their members to see what their decision was. So
Okay.
some are continuing, and I'm sure that some are not continuing.
Can I get a list of those or no?
It shouldn't be a secret. I don't think the response was great, so we'd have to assume that they're sticking to the old way. But yeah, we can keep you guys, give you the up to date as of tomorrow afternoon.
All right,
Okay.
thank you so much.
That would be great. Thank you so much, Mayor. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Any other questions before we move on this particular vote? Council Gross.
What are we moving on to?
So we are going to vote as a committee. Option one is that we do a semi-hybrid beginning on November 22nd, not the 9th, because school committee's there, up until whenever we can get into a true hybrid at Kairos on or about February, second week in February.
So there's going to be a couple of motions made.
Well, yeah, I guess that's right. So, why don't I do the first motion, and just state what I just said. I move that we approve a semi-hybrid model for our full city council meetings beginning on November 22nd until such time that the full hybrid setup is prepared at Kairos Auditorium. The only thing I would add to that is that the location would be at the Gloucester High School Library. And I so move.
Second.
Okay, movement was made by me and it was seconded by Council Worthley. Okay, let's have a discussion about that.
Could you read the motion one more time before we discuss it? I'm sorry.
Okay, I didn't have it written though, Council Worthley. So let me try again. I move to that we have a semi-hybrid meeting beginning on November 22nd to such time that Kairos Auditorium is prepared for full hybrid on or about February, and that the semi-hybrid venue will be Gloucester High School Library, and I so move.
Okay, second.
Okay. Was it close to what I said the first time?
I think so. I wrote it down this time, so I got it now.
All right, let's have a discussion. Councilor Gross.
Yeah, so this is going to be pretty much the same thing we did at the library, which we summarily rejected after a few meetings because it was kind of, well, for one thing, it didn't serve the public, the need that the public is asking for, which is for them to be able to come and talk to us in person. That was one of the big components that's missing. You know, the mayor said that it's probably not a great idea to go back to the pre-COVID model, which for since, I don't know, the
March of 2020.
Since the 1700s, the way democracy's been working. But
1623.
well, no, we were still in a monarchy then. You know, we all were turning away from our screens to look at the big screen to see what was on there, because unless we had two computers, we couldn't follow along with anything. The public was no better served because they can't come. So, I mean, either, you know, I don't know, you know, we're not considering going back to Kairos full on participation. You know, no remote participation doesn't appear to be, wasn't one of the two options. So I guess we're not going to vote on that, but I just.
You can make another motion too, but right.
I can, but I that was not one of the two motions, so I wasn't going to bring that one forward. But I just, that's it. That's my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Gross. Who else would like to comment on this motion? Councilor Worthley.
Yes, so I agree with everybody that ultimately true hybrid is the best scenario. We've had unprecedented public participation with Zoom, but there is something missing without having people in front of us. And also, there's something really healthy about us looking across from each other and, being able to communicate in ways that are just professional and friendly. I think behind screens sometimes we change a little bit. I would like to know what the other motion is so we can get that on the table, not on the table, just to understand if we say yes to this, then what does that mean? The other one, if we say no to this, what's the alternative? Because I don't know what I'd like to have an idea what the other motion is.
All
If we
right,
could.
the other motion is that we stay exactly as we are right now, all the way until February or at such time that Kairos is ready for true hybrid. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so the public would not be able to attend it in person if we met in person in the first motion.
That is correct. But we would be, as a legislative body, we would be meeting in person.
Right. I think the main reason why we left the library because there was exceptional costs, custodial costs that wasn't, will that be the case at the high school?
Nothing excessive. They have a custodian at night, and it's believed that it's pretty much user ready for both Grace or Joanne to set up because Maria Puglisi, their assistant, does all of that on her own. So it's pretty turnkey for Zoom and being present. And there's a screen in the room that's large enough for people to see. So the committee can see the screen, correct, Mayor Verga?
That is correct.
Okay.
One more question.
And the public can participate by remote. Go ahead, Councilor Worthy, and then
Yeah.
Councilor Crowe.
Thank you. This just a question goes back to something Mayor Berger said, that a quasi sort of interim measure will take our IT staff away from working on the big job. With this, though, doing basically what the school committee does, will that take away their focus on what they're working on?
Go ahead, Mayor
Presumably,
Verga.
plug and play. I think the only thing that IT would have to get involved in is having you members get the Wi-Fi password. I found it the hard way when I went to a school committee meeting with my Mac and I couldn't get into the network. I had to use my phone. But that should be the only tech thing. There may be a couple bumps in the first meeting, but like I say, right now we get there and it's pretty much plug and play with Maria for our group.
Okay.
And I would add that by the third meeting that we had at the library, I believe Grace was there, or perhaps Joanne, but Ryan was only there in case there was a question, and there were none. So they both got all the equipment together and set everything up, including the screen, the Zoom technology, and we were successful without any additional assistance, technical assistance. So it's mirroring that same process. Councilor Grow, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just, I can't figure out why anybody wants to spend more face time with me in a public meeting, but I'm kind of with Tony on this, in the sense that, I appreciate the desire to get back into person and to have those meetings, but until we're at a point where people can actually join the meetings in person, I mean, that seems to be what people are interested in, even though I'm willing to bet that our public participation is going to drop off precipitously shortly after our meetings go back into session. I mean, we usually have anywhere from 15 to 20 people on every meeting now. And my recollection of previous council experiences is that that's not a consistent number that we could count on. I hope that people continue to show up and come to the meetings, but until we actually have our home back, I'm kind of ambivalent about going to an intermediary phase. I mean, I'm happy to go with whatever you guys all decide, but I'm not red hot on the idea of doing a transitional phase. So that's just my 2 cents there.
Thank you, Councilor. Any else want to discuss this motion that hasn't spoken? Councilor O'Hara.
Sure. I think we need to put both these motions on the table simultaneously, because it's either yes or no concerning one or the other. I don't think it's fair really to be discussing, and it's kind of confusing. But with that said, I think we all, at least for me, we all need, or at least I have to think about the 9 amendment meetings where we started at 6 o'clock and we were voting on whether we continue at 11:30, and looking at the reality of how many people participated to late, very late, to the bitter end. And I remember, I've been a city councilor for 7 years, and I remember quite well starting a meeting at 7 o'clock, having a handful of people present, and usually by 8 o'clock, 8:30, you're looking at 2 people in the seats. So I think we have to look at reality and the value of what unfortunately bad things came out of COVID, but I think some very good things, and where we're at with meetings and the public's participation is I don't think we can shake a stick at it. They are definitely participating. But back to, I think we need to have both motions on the table, because you can't vote for one and vote for the other. It's just, I don't think that's fair for this particular voting situation. Thank you.
Council Gross, I think it was your suggestion that to make a motion and we do each one separately, not to put you on the spot, but what are your thoughts on what Council O'Hara just said?
I don't know how many motions we can have on the floor at once.
Yeah, you
One.
really can't.
Right.
Exactly.
I think we vote this, if this gets voted up, the next motion's mute. If this gets voted down, the next motion's mute also.
Yeah.
So it
That's
really
it.
only needs to be one motion. So
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Are you okay with that, Council O'Hara?
That's the will of the council. We will
Okay.
vote, and whatever shakes
Okay.
out, shakes out.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Council O'Neill, you had raised your hand and you had already spoken, but you can speak now. Go ahead.
Yes, the public is participating a lot more with the Zoom meetings, and Jason, hold on to your chair, because I agree with what you said. The public doesn't seem to be served by us meeting together and not having the public. I think I think what we have right now is a good forum. So that's my 2 cents.
Anyone else like to speak that hasn't spoken? Okay, okay, Councilor Memard, you are, thank you.
No, I think it's appropriate that we focus on the long-term solution, not distract ourselves. I mean, we've talked about this a lot. We've described, what we experience is best for our constituents and best for ourselves. And I think it's clear to me at this point that to try and fit ourselves into another space in order to be present with each other is a lot more work for a short-term benefit. And we should just keep on the course of what we're doing now as best we can, and enjoying the public participation that we do have via Zoom, and look forward to the date when we'll be back in Kairos and people can participate either in person or remotely. But I think it's a waste of resources on a temporary basis to spin our wheels trying to make something else fit in the short term. Thank you.
Okay, I guess I'm the only one that hasn't truly deliberated on this, so I would say that I am supporting this motion for several reasons. Number one, I think we're a better board, a better group of legislators if we are present in person, looking at each other, even though it's awkward to have your laptop in front of you. I think that it allows us to have a better dialogue when we can kind of turn to someone and talk to them. I think we are more sensitive with our interpersonal relationships, and it does not affect at all people's ability to call in, because it's the same, you're going to be calling in whether we continue just like this or if we do this particular motion and have the meeting at Gloucester High. Further, Gloucester High School Library is fully turnkey. There's no extra work for anyone. So we would just show up there and have our meeting. And the technology is easy. It was already done by Grace in the third meeting that we had at Sawyer Free. And it's even easier from what I understand at Gloucester High School Library. So I feel very important. It's very important to me that we be in person as a legislative board. So I'm hoping that you might consider that. And if you don't, it's the will of the committee. So if anyone else would like to comment on that. Council Worthy?
So I'll be brief. My earlier questions were questions. I just want to really speak on this. I think everyone's right. The public participation is great with Zoom, and this motion does not eliminate that at all. Zoom continues. Just to be clear, none of this is to eliminate that. There's a lot of value in us meeting in person, as Councilor Gilman just said. Our interpersonal skills are improved, but also, with all respect to everyone's pets, there's no dogs barking. I got a cat that sometimes walks across my screen. You know, there's something about being present in a space that says, here, I'm ready for my meeting. And that changes when you're home. And for me, I think it's very important for us to get back to this because March will be here before we know it. And we can't bank on the governor or the Senate continuing this. So it doesn't feel like this is going to pass. I should make sure everyone knows I don't want to eliminate Zoom. I don't think Councilor Gilman wants to eliminate Zoom. I don't think anybody else wants to do that. But this will really help us be a very more cohesive group. So I support it.
Thank you. So I think we're ready to vote on this. Is everyone clear on what the motion is? Or would you like me to repeat it? Okay. Council Worthy, you are first on the roll call.
Yes.
Council Gilman, yes. Council Gross.
No.
Council Grow.
No.
Council Majota.
No.
Council Memard.
No.
Council Nolan.
No.
Council O'Hara.
No.
Council O'Neill.
No.
The noes, the motion is defeated, 2 in favor, 7 opposed. So, so we will wait until Kairos is ready for full hybrid. Mayor Verga, if you can just do anything possible to get the jets going with IT and the stuff that has to be done, because every person that I bump into this community wants to see us back in person, and they want to be able to attend if they want to be there. And of course, we will be continuing Zoom. So it will be a win-win. I'm just anxious to get there because I think we're ready, and I'll look forward to that. So thank you all for being part of this conversation. And now we need to talk about our subcommittee meetings. So the subcommittee meetings, it was agreed to at our last meeting that after Columbus Day, we would be able to use the Harbor Masters conference room for full Zoom, full hybrid. So we can both fit people in the room and then continue with Zoom technology. So I guess my next motion would be that I recommend that we consider moving to the Harbor Masters conference room beginning the 3rd week in November, provided that our Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday dates are available. And I so move.
Second.
Okay, I moved it, and Council Worthy seconded it. Is there a discussion? Council Grow.
So just for clarification, this is full hybrid. This is public participation in the meeting room with us at a subcommittee.
Yes, as well as on the phone if they'd like to dial in and speak. It's full
Right.
hybrid in that room.
Okay.
So they can fit. There's plenty of room. They can actually, but typically in other than O&A, there's really in an applicant speaking, there's really very little public participation. Maybe sometimes we allow for questions. So none of our processes would change whether a person was in the room or wanting to call in remotely to do the same thing. Councilor Nolan, and then back to Councilor Grow.
Before we take this vote, I'd like to see that all the available dates are available for that room. I know that we have the date after Columbus Day, but we voted on it tonight, seeing that we're all going to be at the Harbor Master's office for those dates. I love it. I love the whole in-person thing, people being there in public and doing this, but are all those dates going to be available? So essentially, we can't take a vote on this if we don't know all those dates are available for our subcommittee meetings.
Okay, that's fair. So without objection, I'll withdraw my motion until such time that we find to confirm that the dates that for our regular scheduled meetings are available. We don't need to vote that because I was the one that made the motion. Council Memard, would you like to speak?
I just, even without deciding it tonight, if you could just, it would be helpful to clarifying if we understood. Will someone from the Harbor Master staff be present at that time, or will one of us, the chairs of the committees, for example, be in charge of the security of opening the space and closing it?
I mean, we'd have to work on that detail, but according to Jill Cahill at our last meeting, she said that it's ready for us if we want it. I did not follow up with her to confirm the specific dates. I don't know when the Waterways Board meets. Maybe Tony does. Tony, do you know when the Waterways Board meets? Is it the first or third Thursdays of the month?
No, I think it's supposed to be the second Wednesday.
Okay, so that does not conflict, but I think it's reasonable that we that I've withdrawn this motion, and we'll need to get clarification on the dates. Okay, so we've got Council Gross, Council Grow, and then Council O'Neill, who would like to speak on my withdrawn motion. Go ahead, Council Gross.
Not necessarily on the motion, just on the space. I think we need to find out what the capacity is of that space, because it isn't as big as you may think it is. And I know during the ARPA meetings, if we didn't have the Harbor Master staff there, we ran into some serious technology problems. So I think that both those things need to be thoroughly vetted before we make, well, as well as the calendar. But I think we need to check into both those things. It's not a huge space. So I just wanted to let you know that, but you know, it might have the capacity of 25. So, and like you say, the subcommittees don't usually have a huge attendance, but you know, and you do have the Zoom option, so most people will probably attend via that. But like you said, open meeting law says you have to have the capacity for what you have to have. So that's just a couple of considerations that we need to make sure that the technology is somewhat bulletproof for us to come in and deal with. And so that's all.
Right. So in my 7 years on the city council and many years before that, I don't recall our first floor management, city council headquarters where we would meet ever having more than 25 in a packed house. Councilor Nolan, do you remember a crowd bigger than that?
I do. When we start into February, we start doing reappointments. We've had people waiting outside the lobby, sitting outside to their turn to be called. So there are times when there's a larger crowd. But I'm sure there's a lobby somewhere in the Harbor Master's office. I've never been in it. But
that is the lobby.
Yeah. So, I mean, we did have people during February when we do reappointments that people are sitting in the hallway waiting to come in for their name. So.
Okay, so we'll find out the capacity. That's a fair question. Councilor Grow.
Yeah, I have two questions. One, can we confirm the time for subcommittees? Would be shifting the time away from our 5:30 start to 6 or 7. And then the other thing is if we have a meeting and we've advertised that we're there and we have technical problems and can't get online, do we then have to reschedule a meeting, or can we continue on with the meeting?
Good question.
My understanding is that you would have to repeat any types of deliberations if you lost your technology at another meeting and not be able to make the final vote. So
we
I
have
think
to
the
kill the
school
meeting.
committee had that happen once, if I'm not mistaken, and they had to go through the same matter. So if there's a technical issue with either Zoom or I don't know what would happen if you're in present. I don't think that's a problem. We haven't had an issue with Zoom technology in 2.5 years on the city council. So I don't know why that, I mean, I think that the Wi-Fi is very strong there, according to people that I've spoken to. But it's, I can make sure, I can ask Suzanne Egan how we would deal with. So your question is, how would we deal with a Zoom mishap when we were meeting in present?
Right. I mean, obviously, if we're on Zoom right now and we have a technical problem, the meeting ends. I mean, if we can't function on a Zoom call right now, we can't function. But if we are effectively got to have a quorum of the council or a quorum of the committee, and we're capable of moving forward, can we move forward, or do we have to stop?
Right. I'll check with Attorney Egan on that. So back to Council O'Neill, you had your hand raised, if I remember correctly.
Yes, I was going to ask the same question that Tony asks, like what is the capacity?
Mhm.
And going back to when P&D did the amendments, we had a lot of people on the call. So I don't know if they can't fit in the room, would they just go home and go on Zoom?
Well,
We had a lot of people.
I have a reason to believe that a lot of people really like Zoom and it's been convenient. And I think a lot of people will continue to use it. But I think the people that would like to be in that room with us have that option to attend and be present. So I think it's kind of the best of the best. But I can't predict what's going to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I hear you. Any other comments on my withdrawn motion? Anyone else that hasn't spoken? So I'll call on Councilor Gross.
Yeah, just to go back to, I had the same problem that the mayor had during the ARPA meetings. I couldn't get on with my laptop at the harbor master's office, but I was going through guest. So I just think that's something that just has to be in the discussion. How do we make sure that the subcommittee members have an active link? That's all. Just something that needs to be in the discussion.
Okay, so that's a Ryan conversation, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so our questions are capacity, the times, availability, the what happens legally, technically, if you can't, if you lose the Zoom connection.
Access and security.
Access and security. And I think I've got them all. I'll listen closely to the Zoom meeting tomorrow to make sure I've got everything perfectly written down. Okay, next order of business, Madam Clerk. Can you try just shifting, Madam Clerk, because we can't hear you again.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Go ahead, try, yep.
Okay. All right, the next order of business is confirmation of new appointments.
Great, and I'll turn the meeting over to O&A Chair, Councilor Nolan. Councilor Nolan, you're muted.
Philip Story is in the house tonight, and thank you for standing by for the hour we went through this necessary process. If you could just tell the council a little bit about yourself and why you'd like to be involved with the Committee for the Arts. Philip Story, can you hear us?
Philip, could you unmute yourself? I know we heard you.
Here
when
we
you-
are.
Oh,
Can you
great.
hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry about that. I'm not used to the application. So you can hear me, but you can't see me.
That's correct.
Exactly.
I'm more charming in person. Sorry about that. So basically, my wife and I have lived here in Gloucester for about 25 years. Our ancestors didn't come over on a Portuguese or Italian boat, but we feel like we've lived here long enough to feel deeply involved in the town. Myself, I have my degrees in English and in American Studies from Florida State and then from Wesleyan University. I've written and published poetry since my 20s. I'm now 67. My early career was kind of checkered in the sense that I did a lot of different things. So I worked for newspapers, my hometown newspaper in Uniontown, PA, Pittsburgh Press, which was the neighboring paper, a little bit bigger. I worked for the Torrington Register of Citizen at one time. I taught for 7 years, junior high, at a boarding school for 4 of those years and 3 years at a Montessori school. Working part-time at the American Indian Archaeological Institute. I forgot to mention that I did a year or two, almost 2 years at Old Sturbridge Village working in costume. I love museum work. Anyway, this all worked up to when I got a job as editor for the Academic American Encyclopedia, which was one of the Grolier encyclopedias. I did all the ologies, the sociology, archaeology, anthropology, psychology. And they said, oh, by the way, can you do computer science? Which I said, what the hell? Turned out I was okay at it. And I ended up after a couple of years as the editorial system manager for the whole Grolier editorial department. And then from there went to the career that I had for more than a couple of decades. Software sales engineer for various software companies, mostly having to do with technical editing software. Retired to Gloucester here. Worked with my friend Chris Anderson. Some of you may know him. He was trying to make a go of the Lit House. It was an editorial house. Plus, we did a lot of events. You know, we had readings and that sort of thing. And we tried to make a go of that, but we're not able to make it economically work. So I did that for a couple of years. What I do in my my own time is my wife and I buy and sell ephemera, which is kind of the definition of, or the term for old paper or antique paper. We just did our biggest show in Allentown a couple weeks ago. And I'm working on a book about the guy that took pictures down in front of the statue from 1926 until, in the summer times, until 1976. Okay. I've always been very interested in public art, I think, or in working in art and writing. I mean, I can give you all my resume. I've done a lot of other wacky things. Some of you, if you've ever been to the Bananas shows at City Hall, my wife and I have both been in those for the past several years. So you both of us tend to be in comical numbers. So you might have seen us. Anyway, that's enough to bore you with. I actually was at a meeting of the committee today, and just love the people that are on it, and already rolling up my sleeves to work on what we do. So
Excellent.
that's all.
Thank you, Philip. Is there any council questions or comments for Philip? right. Hearing none. Phil, thank you for your expertise. I love Pittsburgh. I love the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I'm glad to hear you say that. It's kind of a hidden gem. People that haven't been there don't understand how special that little town is, actually.
Oh, it's a wonderful, hard-working town. You spend most of your time under a bridge, but it's beautiful.
It's also the home of Mr. Rogers, so that's.
Yeah.
So without any further ado, I'd like to read the motion. On a motion by Councilor Harris, seconded by Councilor Majota, the Ordinance Administration Committee voted by roll call, 3 in favor, 0 opposed, to recommend that the City Council appoint Philip Story to the Committee of the Arts, term to expire February 14th, 2025, and I so move.
Second.
Second.
Motion made by Council Nolan, seconded by Council Worthley. And before we discuss this, Mayor Verga has his hand raised.
Yes, thank you. First, my son lives in Pittsburgh, and I've been to the Mr. Rogers Museum, which was great. But that being said, you've so far, Philip is now the 6th person that's come through the council in the reconstituted Committee for the Arts. And one of the main missions I had when I was bringing it back together, because when I got into office, we had one person who was left, whose term expired in February, and then myself by virtue of the office. So I've had people with on this new group with expertise in painting and sculpture, musicians. That was a big thing. I wanted to make sure we had musicians, and now poetry. Philip was selected by a previous Committee for the Arts to be our poet laureate, but it never came to fruition. And I'm so happy he's willing to step forward and take part in this now. There will be a revision, I believe it was on this agenda or last week's last meeting, but to O&A to review the ordinance for the Committee for the Arts and make some changes that will allow for the removal of the mayor as a voting member, which makes no sense, and adding a 7th active member. But for now, we're at 6. I believe Philip already has taken the oath, and he participated in the meeting fully. So I fully support him as a member, and I hope you folks do as well.
Thank you, Mayor. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion, councilors? Seeing none, roll call vote. Council Worthley?
Yes.
Council Gilman? Yes. Council Gross?
Yes.
Council Grow?
Yes, and welcome.
Council Majota?
Yes.
Council Memard?
Yes, and welcome as well.
Council Nolan?
Yes, thank you, Philip.
Council O'Hara?
Yes.
Council O'Neill?
Yes.
Yeses have it. 9 in favor, 0 opposed. Welcome, Philip. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Next order of business, Madam Clerk. We can't, Grace. So I look forward to getting that new computer in the office, because I know it's got to be frustrating. You're there working at City Hall right now, and we don't have a backup. So I'm sorry. Council Grow, you have your hand raised.
Didn't last week we tried, where she actually called in on her phone and was able to communicate that way? Is that an effective way of dealing with this tonight?
Grace, do you want to do that? And in the meantime, as you're doing that, I will continue, but we can't really have the meeting without her present. That's the problem. Do you want to try to dial in right now, Grace?
I can try.
Okay. So I'm going to pause right now because our rules of procedure say that we need the clerk on the calls. Councilor Nolan?
Would you like to call for a 2-minute recess?
2-minute recess. Okay. We will call for a 2-minute recess. I see it's 7:15. We'll be back at 7:18. Is that okay? 3 minutes in case someone has a longer walk to the bathroom. So we'll be back at 7:18.
Val,
Yes, Tracy?
I think I'm gonna bow out.
Okay, I know you
If
weren't
it's o-
feeling well.
If it's okay, do I need to say or do anything or?
No, I'll just report that you are not going to finish the call
All right,
when we
thanks.
get back. Not a
Okay,
problem. I
thank you.
hope you're feeling better. Appreciate
Thank
you
you.
being.
Hope you feel better, Tracy.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Scott. I just don't know what to do about it. I've tried everything. Thanks.
There's stuff going around.
Grace, if you're back on the call, we decided to take a 3-minute recess until 7:18.
Way ahead of you. I recessed already. It was an opportune moment.
Assistant City Clerk. I think she's dialed in. Grace, do you want to try to see if we can hear your audio? Great. Can we hear you, Grace?
You're probably going to want to mute your computer though.
Yeah, now that you're on the audio, Grace, can you?
Is it okay now?
Yes.
Now it's fine.
And if you just turn the camera on, we can see your face. There you
Great.
are. Look at you.
Okay. So we've done a workaround again. This is good. Sorry, Grace. I know how frustrating it is.
You need a headset.
I need a computer that works.
That would be also good.
Did you talk to Ryan about a backup computer for the office? A laptop?
Well, I put in the ticket the last time this happened. I wasn't anticipating tonight happening.
Right.
So it kind of
Thank
slipped
you for
below the
filling in.
radar, but
Right.
I sent I sent a ticket tonight as well, say that we need a computer.
Great. And we appreciate you filling in for Joanne tonight. Short notice. Thank you.
You're
It still
welcome.
is open to the public, so internals, we can figure out.
Absolutely. Thank you, Counselor. Okay, so counselors, can you all show your faces so we know that everybody's back from a 3-minute break? Thank you, Counselor Majota, Counselor Worthley, Counselor Grow, Counselor Nolan, Counselor Memard. We'll wait for Counselor Gross. Counselor O'Neill has left the call because she's not feeling well. Okay, we're all back. All right, so we're ready to resume the meeting. And we are at the next order of business. So, Madam Clerk, thank you for improvising on your technology. And if you could call the next matter of business, thank you.
It is the consent agenda and the unanimous consent calendar.
Thank you. Counselors, would anyone like to pull any matter off the consent agenda? Counselor Nolan.
I'd like to pull off under council orders, number 1, CC 22-026 Worthley to amend the prerequisite for acceptance of private roads. We do have a private road working group that just about compiled all their information today. And a lot of this, I believe, pertains to that group. I don't want to jump out of order. I understand what Councilor Worthley is asking for, but I'd like to put this off until after we receive the working group's order and what their recommendations are. It is a committee of volunteers that's put 4 months of their time together to gather information. Jeff's on the right move on some of this stuff, but without taking away from their hard work, I'd like to hold off on this before we send it back to O&A.
Okay.
Pull it off, then vote on the consent agenda, and then decide on that one, or do we discuss this one here?
No, that's what we should do.
I think right now we should pause on this and see if there's anything else that anyone wants to remove, and then we'll vote everything else, and then we'll go back to this. Anyone else want to remove something on the consent agenda? Council O'Hara.
Item 1 on information only concerning the Washington Street crossing.
Okay. So anyone else? So with the exception of Council Order number 1 and information only number 1, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second? Council Grow made the motion. Council Memard seconded it. All in favor? No, we have to do a roll call vote. Council Worthley.
Yes.
Council Gilman. Yes. Council Gross.
Yes.
Council Grow.
Yes.
Council Majota.
Yes.
Council Memard.
Yes.
Council Nolan.
Yes.
Council O'Hara.
Yes.
And Council O'Neill is absent. 8 in favor, 1 absent. So let's go back to the first matter that was removed. And that was Council Order number 1, 2022-026 Worthley. So Council Nolan, do you have anything else to add on that in terms of your recommendation?
My recommendation would be to hold off on this until we get the information for the private road working group. We've been involved with that for 4 months, and there's a lot of information coming out of that group that it might think would cross or work with the same measures as Council Worthley. I just think it's fair for us to accept their recommendations with something that may actually be on the same page of working with it. And I think that at this time, I wouldn't want to have this in front of O&A without the road working group.
Okay, thank you. Council Worthy, would you be willing to withdraw this right now and pause, or would you like us to vote this?
I would like for us to vote, and I'd like to explain why I think it's okay to do both. And if I have that moment, I'd like to do that now if I could.
Okay, so the motion right now, so let me just make sure that I get this right.
It's a separate vote to send to O&A or not send to O&A. That's all. All it is.
Okay, so go ahead. You have the floor, Council Worthley.
Yeah, so I had made a list before this term started of about 20 or so council orders that I wanted to submit. And rightfully so, Councilor Gilman, you suggested hold off, get used to being a city councilor again, and let's work through the zoning changes. And this was one of them. I don't see why we couldn't send it to O&A, and as chairperson, Councilor Nolan, you can hold up, pause as long as you'd like, but it does get the issue on the agenda so that if we have an action to take, we can make a movement on that without having to submit something and wait another 2.
We lost you, Jeff.
Yeah, Council Worthy, we can't hear you. You're having technical difficulties with your Bluetooth. Want to try again?
Yeah.
Usually back. Go
Sorry.
ahead.
You hear me now? Sorry. I can't explain it. It's random. So I don't know what you got. I respect the work that the working committee is doing. This doesn't prevent that from continuing. It certainly doesn't prevent the council from reviewing that. And as chairperson of O&A, Councilor Nolan, you can pause as long as you want. What this does is it gets the council's objective moving, at least mine, and hopefully the council's objective to move forward.
Oh.
We can't hear you,
Frozen and
Council
lost.
Quigley.
When you look at that legislation, it says the council should legislate, but it says the mayor's office and the auditor and the DPW director can decide if they don't want to provide us information, we can't legislate any longer. And I feel like that's a real separation of church and state, if you will. And I think that the mayor's office has been very good about saying that we legislate and he administers, and that doesn't change that. So I'd like to send that to committee, and Council Nolan, with your advice and guidance, take it up when you think it's time, if it comes up.
Councilor Nolan.
Jeff, we missed about 80% of that.
I'm sorry.
So
I think as chairperson, you can run it, you can have it come up at a hearing at O&A whenever you're ready, if you're ready. And if you want to put the brakes on until something else comes forward, I'm not going to pressure anybody. What this does do is it saves us 2 to 4 weeks of putting something forward. So if there is a recommendation that says, okay, let the council legislate and the mayor's office administer, that this ordinance, really the way it is, says the mayor's office administration, and this isn't about Mayor Verder, it could be any mayor's office, they can stop a council from acting on legislation. I don't think that really ever should have been in place to begin with. How could we ever allocate funds to a role that doesn't exist yet, right? That doesn't even make sense. So I think I'd like to have the council vote to send it to O&A, and with complete regard for what you're saying, Council Nolan, if it takes you a month or 2 or 3 to act on it, you can sit in abeyance and wait for that moment. So I'd ask the council to send it to committee, and your point is well noted, Council Nolan. Thank you.
So we need a majority vote to send this back on Councilor Nolan's request. Is that correct? Because this is not the unanimous consent calendar. It is the consent agenda. So on the motion, Councilor Gross.
Yeah, is there a time limit on something that can be held up in subcommittee?
Only on zoning.
There's nothing in I'm looking at other rules right now, but I'm asking, Sean, do you remember anything about whether or not you're limited on how long you can wait to bring something that's been voted to you?
I have never seen anything that stipulates where O&A can hold off and hold in committee.
Okay, and I had the same, when I saw this council order, I had the same thought that the private road committee should probably, can this go also to the private road committee to look at, or is that inappropriate because it's an ordinance?
Well, the private road committee is a function of administration, isn't it? It's not a council committee.
Right.
So I think this is really separating what our role is to legislate and taking the input from the mayor's office. That's, sorry, I didn't answer.
We send plenty of things to mayor's committees.
Councilor Nolan.
First of all, it is definitely a mayor's committee, but it's a mayor's committee that was brought forward with volunteers and people involved. We can decide to enact on any time we want to. But in this case, I think that it's valid to show a sign of respect for their work and to gather their information. I believe the final meeting was today. Their findings will be out shortly. And a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks isn't going to make a difference. It's October. We have a lot of things that are coming up. Most of these projects don't start to spring or fall. And I don't think that anything out of this right away is going to make a difference. I just, out of respect to the committee, I'd like to not walk on their toes and let them say what they want to say, because it's a recommendation committee to the mayor's office. It will be conveyed to us, and then we can go from there. I feel as though that I like your ideas, Jeff. I have nothing against them. I just, out of respect that, I know it's legislative versus administrative on this. But I think we have a group of hardworking people that put a lot of time into charts and sheets and spreadsheets and information, and the links of roads, intersections, months worth of stuff. And they do have some recommendations. And I just feel as though that we need to respect them and let them report to the mayor's office, which will eventually and most likely immediately come to us for the recommendations, because it is all zoning and it'll be ordinance, not zoning, sorry, ordinances that they're looking for. And instead of, letting people think there's something going on, I'd rather hear the full report from them and then move on.
Council Grow, you had your hand up.
As someone who argued vociferously at several meetings in the recent past about referrals to subcommittees, I would find it to be slightly hypocritical for me to oppose Jeff's request to refer. But I'm glad to see that he's finally seen that you can refer something without necessarily having immediate action take place, which is what I think Councilor Nolan's position is, which is that I see nothing wrong with making the referral, with the understanding that Councilor Nolan will bring it to the table at a time when it is appropriate to do so, and that means following the recommendations or the guidance that by the Private Road Committee, and that there should be no expectation that it appear on the agenda until such time as Councilor Nolan, as the chair, feels it's appropriate to begin the process. So I'm all for the referral, but I'm also totally for Councilor Nolan controlling the access to begin that process until at such time it makes sense after hearing the committee, because I think he's absolutely right. We can't, if we go and start stepping over the toes of the folks who put in the time and energy to come up with some recommendations, we're not being very respectful to that process and their guidance. So I think that we can find a mid-range here, make the referral, but we do it with subject to Councilor Nolan's guidance as the chair of the committee as to when it occurs to come up for discussion.
Any other comments by councilors? Council Worthley.
Yeah, I just want to say, to be clear, and thank you, Councilor Nolan. And I think everyone knows me, none of this is meant with any disrespect to volunteers or the mayor's office. If anybody feels disrespected by me submitting a council order on an ordinance change for discussion, it's never intended that way. So just to make sure everyone knows, my goal is to try to help move the train forward in whatever ways we can, and never intended to be disrespectful, and it certainly wouldn't be the case going forward. And like Councilor Groh said, I completely understand that if this sits in committee for a month or two before you have your first agenda item putting on the agenda, you won't hear a peep from me as to why you're not moving on it. I fully respect your authority, though. Thank you.
Councilor Memard.
Just, following up on the conversation, I would like to say that I welcome and look, with considerable anticipation to the mayor's reviewing and then presenting to us his private road task group results, which they did put 4 or 5 months into. And I think with Councilor Worthley's eye on the ball and the immediacy of this issue for many of us in the city in terms of private road maintenance and repair, we'll move right on it once the mayor's office has had a chance to digest the recommendations that came out of that task force.
Anyone else like to speak on this? Seeing none, I will just make a comment and then we will vote it. I'm on that task force. I am totally in gratitude for the amount of work that's been put on it. Consistent meetings, extra meetings that are in addition, not meetings, but projects, and then results and data and research and benchmarking. And there's been so much work, and a great part of the work that this committee has done, I will share, is emphasizing the process and the procedure for converting private roads to public with lots of best practices. So I think everyone should be aware that there will be some really very, very helpful material that will be presented. And I think it will add a lot of value to this conversation. So I will be supporting Councilor Nolan right now because I think that the courteous thing to do right now, and this is no offense to you, Council Worthy. I understand that you're excited to put this through. It's been something that's really been on your mind. I think the best way to do this would be just to not bring it forward right now, and just let this play out for 2 months. That would be my suggestion, but absolutely in support of the will of the committee. So either way, we're going to do the right thing on this important ordinance. So thank you for taking the initiative, Council Worthley. So let's do a vote. The vote is to refer this motion, this order to O and A. We didn't really have so this was really Jeff's motion. Was there a second on this so we can make sure that we vote this correctly to refer? Someone want to second this?
Second.
Okay, Council O'Hara will
Second.
second it. Okay, to refer this to O and A. So Council Worthley,
Yes.
Council Gilman, no. Council Gross,
Yes.
Council Grow,
Yes.
Council Majota,
No.
Council Memard,
No,
Council Nolan,
Nope.
Council O'Hara,
Yes.
the motion, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 4 and
Failed.
4. So I believe the motion
Tracy absent.
fails because it wasn't a majority.
That's correct.
Okay, so the motion fails. So Council Worthy, keep that on the queue, and you will play a major role in this, in seeing what comes to fruition on this report from the working group. So thank you. In the next order of business, Madam Clerk,
No, no,
go ahead.
we have-
Oh, wait, we have another
the
one.
motion, Yeah.
Council O'Hara asked to remove the information only of the report of the incident report in the train crossing center City Council President from Elizabeth Salucci of the Department of Public Utilities Oversight Division. So Council O'Hara.
Thank you. I'd be willing to read this letter so that everyone at home who hasn't read it would know what's within the content of the one-page letter from Railroad Safety Consultant James Sawtell to Elizabeth Salucci, who's the Director of Transportation Oversight with the Department of Public Utilities. So, Madam Chair, would you like me to read it so that everyone understands? It will only take me 2 minutes.
Sure, go ahead. And I
Okay.
think it's on page 57 of the packet. So everyone should know that this is
51,
in the
page
51.
51.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. So
I
it's
have a
it's
copy.
concerning Washington Street crossing. Dear Ms. Salucci, I recently tasked by the DPU to look into a matter that occurred at Washington Street grade crossing at Gloucester, Mass. During late August 2022. The incident involved a southbound vehicle which was struck by a grade crossing gate arm as an MBTA commuter train was moving southbound after a station stop from the nearby passenger station. Washington Street crosses the MBTA main line on a single tangent track and is located east of the Gloucester passenger station. I responded to the site on September 13, 2022, and met with the Keolis Technical Signal employees to inspect the grade crossing circuits and determine if the installed plans, firmware, and software was safe and conformed with the fail-safe federal regulations. I obtained a copy of the in-service circuit plans and determined that the plans were up to date and conformed to the federal railroad safety regulations. I reviewed the plans and determined that the crossing installation was safe and presented no potential risk to the highway users of the Washington Street grade crossing. The grade crossing is activated by an electronic predictor unit that activates the active warning protection by censoring the movement of the train as the train dwells in the passenger station to board and leave passengers. As the train stands in the station, timing circuits in the software allow the crossing gate arms and flashing lights to return to a non-active status. When a train starts to move eastward, the track detection circuit senses a change in circuit impedance and restarts the active warning protection. Apparently, there was a highway user vehicle that was standing on the main line trackage and struck by the southwest quadrant gate. A copy of the Gloucester City Council letter and grade crossing circuit plans are attached for your ready reference. Mr. Sawtell, he has a recommendation. The recommendation that the town and the commuter rail agencies, including the Operation Lifesaver group, conduct an enhanced education plan for the Gloucester citizens on awareness of trains using Washington Street grade crossing. Sincerely, James Sawtell, Railroad Safety Consultant.
Okay. Thank you, Counselor. I appreciate it. If any counselors have any questions on this letter,
I
feel
apologize for that. Can you hear me now?
Go
Can you hear me
ahead.
now?
Yes,
Okay,
but I don't,
Madam Chair.
Counselor, this matter isn't on the agenda. It's just for information only. But my comment was going to be that if you want to ask a question, tomorrow's meeting is at 10, and I can bring the question up. The folks on this call tomorrow are the MBTA Keolis folks. They're not the Department of Public
Certainly.
Utilities. So if you want to give me a
Understood.
question, I'm happy to do that, but I really don't want to discuss the letter here tonight because it's not on the agenda.
No,
So-
I understand. I understand.
Okay.
Obviously, this is a highly publicized issue
Yeah,
that has affected dozens of residents, if not hundreds of residents in the city and visitors to our city. But I'm not sure exactly what Mr. Sawtell is trying to say in his recommendation. How is the agency to provide a enhanced education plan for the Gloucester citizens? Does the MBTA want to erect electronic signs on either side of the crossing?
no,
so
there
that
are actually
Gloucester residents?
So there are 7-minute modules that they have on about 15 different safety issues. And I think that they were thinking that that would be helpful to look at some of those modules and to begin to communicate them. But I can't really address this tomorrow on the MBTA Keolis, but I can certainly call and get some more information from Elizabeth Solucci to be more specific about the education plans. But the education plans that I just described are what I've been learning on the MBTA weekly calls. And that's something that is a work in progress. And they're looking to come up with some modules that they feel would be helpful for like driver's ed classes, and different organizations in the community. So Councilor, I appreciate you bringing this up. And if anyone gives me any more specific questions to ask, I'm happy to do that on the weekly. And now they're bi-weekly, but tomorrow morning we are meeting at 10. So just send me an email and I'll bring it up with the folks on the call and you'll get an answer. Okay. Thank you, Councilor O'Hara. Does that answer your questions?
It does to some extent. It's more, we have driver's ed. How do you educate 30,000 residents of Gloucester? Rockport would increase it, and potentially 30,000 visitors that come into our city. That's a more important question.
Right. Okay. So the broader community. So we'll make sure that we talk a little bit more about the education plan and how we're going to extend it out via 1623 and updates, YouTube, on the city website, et cetera. So that's a really good question. All right, so I think, let me just make sure. So we need to put that matter back on the agenda and vote it. So, Council Worthley. Council Worthy, you're muted.
Yes.
Thank you. Council Gilman, yes. Council Gross?
Yes.
Council Grow?
Yes.
Council Majota?
Yes.
Council Memard?
Yes.
Council Nolan?
Yes.
Council O'Hara?
Yes.
Council O'Neill is absent. So we are approving this on the consent agenda for information only, 8 in favor, 1 absent. Next order of business, Madam Clerk.
The October 6th, 2022 Budget and Finance Standing Committee report.
And I will turn the meeting over to Councilor Scott Memard, the Chair of BNF.
Thank you very
Oh,
much,
Council-
Pardon me,
Madam
Madam
Chair.
President?
Yes,
Don't
go
we have
ahead.
a unanimous consent?
Oh, thank you, Councilor Grow. Shame on me. So we have a unanimous consent agenda. Councilors, anyone wish to pull that matter off the unanimous consent agenda? And what that matter is, hold on. It's tax classification. Memorandum from Principal Assessor regarding tax classification. And it says, please accept the following amendment to the mayor's report. Attached, you'll find a memo from the Principal Assessor requesting the City Council begin the tax classification process. And then there's a memorandum from the mayor. And that's all on the city website, the unanimous consent agenda. So are we like to take a roll call vote on accepting the unanimous consent agenda? Is there a motion to approve
So moved.
as
Second.
okay,
Second.
made by Councilor Grow, second by Councilor Worthley. Let's do a roll call vote. Councilor Worthley,
Yes.
Councilor Gilman, yes. Councilor Gross,
Yes.
Councilor Grow,
Yes.
Councilor Majota,
Yes.
Councilor Memard,
Yes.
Councilor Nolan,
Yes.
Councilor O'Hara,
Yes.
Councilor O'Neill is absent. The unanimous consent agenda is approved, 8 in favor, 1 absent. Next order of business, Madam Clerk.
The October 6th, 2022 Budget and Finance Standing Committee report.
Okay, so once again, we'll go back to Councilor Memard, who chairs BNF, and the floor is yours, Councilor Memard.
Yeah, we had Budget and Finance Committee had a very full agenda at our last meeting, but several of those are matters that will be before us for public hearings on the next meeting date. And we're looking for acceptance this evening of 3 or 4 funding donations that have come our way through good works of various staff people. The first matter is a memorandum from the General Council requesting our acceptance of 2 gifts to the city of Gloucester. And the committee recommendation was that on a motion by myself, Councilor Memhard, seconded by Councilor Worthley, Budget and Finance Committee voted by roll call, 3 in favor, 0 opposed, to recommend that the City Council accept a donation under Mass General Law 4453A.5, a gift of tangible goods to the City of Gloucester from the Cape Ann chapter of Daughters of the American Revolution for a bronze plaque commemorating the Battle of Gloucester, 1775, the plaque having an estimated value in the amount of $3,000. And I so move.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Memard, seconded by Councilor Worthley. And I believe we want to see if we can put that on the screen. Is that possible to screen share that? Grace? Awesome.
I know there were two plaques. Am I looking at one right now or?
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's the first one. That's
Oh.
correct. The second one is the round bronze one. And we're not quite there yet.
There you go. Thank you, Grace.
Yeah,
No, the top one.
that's a second separate motion.
Okay, so we'll go to the
Oh,
top.
sorry. Tell me when to stop.
That's it right there.
And
Okay.
both of these gifts to the city are being handled properly and referred through the mayor's office for acceptance. And he and the city will make a determination as to placement, the appropriate placement for each of these. I don't know, Greg, if you'd like to speak to them.
Okay,
Yes.
great. I think, Grace, you could remove the screen share so we can look at the conversation now. Thank you.
Great. And when we get to the second motion, when you get to the second motion, if Grace could bring up that other plaque, that'd be wonderful. So these gifts were made to the office. I'll speak in general for the two. And in the memo from Suzanne Egan, she calls out which Mass General law this pertains to. But over the, how long, 9 months I've been in office, I've gotten a few trinkets and mementos as gifts to me. These two obviously rise higher up on the list that aren't gifts to me and because of their value. The first one that you guys have a motion for now, I'm a historian, a history buff, and I was not aware of this Battle of Gloucester. So if you guys haven't read the attachment from the DAR, Daughters of the American Revolution, certainly read through it and then read the text of that plaque. But they're asking, they prefer to see it put at the park down on the fort. They're leaving it up to the DPW to pick the ultimate location. But I just want to give a big thank you to them for donating this, especially in time for our 400th anniversary. And I guess I'll hold my comments for the other item for when you get to that on your agenda.
Great, thank you. So the motion was made by Councillor Memard, seconded by Councillor Worthley, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Verga, for the explanation. Is there a further narrative or a discussion? Councillor Memard, do you have any additional comments to make?
No, we're all set. We clearly appreciate this and like the fact that the mayor's office is formally presenting it to us so that it can be officially received and positioned in the city as appropriate.
Great, thank you. Any further discussion, councilors? Seeing none, Councillor Worthley.
Yes.
Councillor Gilman, yes. Councillor Gross.
Yes.
Councillor Grow.
Yes.
Councillor Majota.
Yes.
Councillor Memard.
Yes.
Councillor Nolan.
Yes, and thank you.
Councillor O'Hara.
Yes.
Councillor O'Neill is absent. The yeses have it, 8 in favor, 1 absent. Next order of business, Councillor Memhard.
Yes, the second item that we're accepting before you tonight is a plaque, excuse me, donated by Daniel Altschuler, who's a Gloucester artist who worked extensively with Walker Hancock and is well regarded. And this is a large medallion. And on a motion by myself, seconded by Councillor Worthley, Budget and Finance Committee voted by roll call, 3 in favor, 0 opposed. To recommend the city of Gloucester accept a donation under Mass General Law 4453A and 1/2, a gift of tangible goods to the city of Gloucester from Daniel Altschuler, artist, for a metal plaque of the Gloucester fishermen with an estimated value in the amount of $1,500, and I so move.
Second.
Motion made by Councillor Memard, seconded by Councillor Worthy. Is there narrative or further discussion?
I think Grace is going to go ahead and post the picture
Great.
of the medallion. Here we are.
So Val, if I may.
Absolutely. The floor is yours, Mayor Verga.
So obviously the first plaque not something that would fit comfortably in the mayor's office. So obviously that needs to be at a site somewhere else. This one was actually delivered as a gift to me. And I made it clear that this is not a gift to me. This is a gift to the city based on its value. And I don't want to have it hidden in the mayor's office or even the mayor's suite. So we do need to figure an appropriate place for it in time for the 400th. But thank you to Daniel Altschuler for thinking of us and donating this wonderful piece.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Further discussion, councilors? Seeing none, roll call vote. Council Worthley,
Yes.
Council Gilman, yes. Council Gross,
Yes.
Council Grow,
Yes.
Council Majota,
Yes.
Council Memard,
Yes.
Council Nolan,
Yes.
Council O'Hara, Council O'Hara, technical difficulty, and Council O'Neill is absent. The yeses have it, 7 in favor, 1 absent, 1 technical difficulty. Next order of business. Councilor Memhard.
Yes, the second matter before us tonight is a memorandum from the Elder Services Director, Elise Sinagra, and the 2023 SBT 4 in the amount of $20,000. And I'll go ahead and read the motion. Is Elise present? I'm not sure she's going to speak to this. I didn't see her.
No, I don't.
Reading the motion. Excuse me?
I do not see her as well.
Okay. On a motion by myself, seconded by Councilor Worthley, Budget and Finance voted by a roll call, 3 in favor, 0 opposed, to recommend that the City Council approve a special budgetary transfer 2023 SBT 4 in the amount of $20,000 from the Mayor's contingency emergency account as noted to the Council on Aging Senior Citizens Activities account number as noted for the purpose of partially funding the non-emergency medical rides program during fiscal year 2023, and I so move.
Second.
Motion made by Council Memard, seconded by Council Worthy. Is there a discussion?
This is an item that had come before us, and Elise has worked closely with the mayor's office to fill this need. And it provides services for medical appointments in terms of transportation needs. And it's a different kind of service than Cato offers to our constituencies there. Greg, I don't know if you'd like to speak to this as well or not.
Mayor
Elise was
Verga?
very grateful for this. Elise was very, very grateful for the support from the mayor's office in working to address this need.
Right, we fully support it, and it seemed like an appropriate place to pull from within our mayor's office budget, and it should hold us over for a while. But we need to be prepared at budget time to figure out a more permanent way of funding this.
Thank you, Mayor. Further discussion, councilors? Seeing none, roll call vote. Council Worthley,
Yes.
Council Gilman, yes. Council Gross,
Yes.
Council Grow,
Yes.
Council Majota,
Yes.
Council Memard,
Yes.
Council Nolan,
Yes.
Council O'Hara.
Yes.
Oh. Council, you're back. That's great. We thought you had technical difficulty. Thank you. Council O'Hara voted yes, and Council O'Neill is absent. So the motion passes 8 in favor, 1 absent. Next order of business, Council Memard.
Yes, our third and final item from Budget and Finance Committee this evening is a memorandum from the Veteran Services Director, Adam Kukaru, requesting acceptance of donations in the amount of $3,750. And on a motion by myself, seconded by Councilor Worthley, Budget and Finance Committee voted by roll call, 3 in favor, 0 opposed, to recommend that the City Council accept cash donations under Mass General Law 4453A to support veteran services in the aggregate amount of $3,750 from the following members and business partners within our community. And I'll list those: Ed Camo, Pamela Carter, the West Gloucester Trinitarian Congregational Church, Joanne Sanfilippo, Andrea Bushi in the St. Anne's class of 1966, and Sergeant David J. Coulard's Memorial Fund. And the total is $3,750. And I just comment that the Sergeant David Coulard Memorial Fund contribution totals $3,000. And David was a young man. He was a sniper that was killed in Iraq, who loved coming to Gloucester for his summers and going out fishing. And his mom has worked hard to honor his memory and raised a lot of funding in support of his mission. And we're very grateful to accept that here.
Great. And would you move the motion?
So moved. Thank you.
Seconded by Council Worthley. Further discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote. Councillor Worthley?
Yes.
Councillor Gilman? Yes. Councillor Gross?
Yes.
Councillor Grow?
Yes.
Councillor Majota?
Yes.
Councillor Memard?
Yes.
Councillor Nolan?
Yes.
Councillor O'Hara? Councillor O'Hara?
I don't see it on the call.
Councillor O'Hara, I think, is off the call now. Councillor O'Neill is absent. The yeses have it, 7 in favor, 1 technical difficulty, and 1 absent. And I think that concludes BNF.
It does. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Memard. Next order of business, Madam Clerk.
The Ordinances and Administration Standing Committee report from October 3rd. That was a holiday. They did not meet. So I'll go down to the October 5th, 2022 Planning and Development Standing Committee report.
Council Grow.
You got nothing.
Thank you. Next order of business, Madam Clerk.
Public hearing number 2022-026, amendment to inflammable license granted to Energy North Incorporated to store 26,000 gallons of gasoline, regular and underground storage tank, UST, 8,000 gallons super and UST, and 6,000 gallons of diesel, retail and UST at 65 to 73 Essex Avenue.
Thank you. And I'd like to open the public hearing and welcome the applicant, Hussein Savakil. If you could introduce yourself. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. If I didn't, my apologies. Would you introduce yourself and tell us about this this request?
Okay, good evening. For the record, Hussein Savinchkid with Freeman Peterson, Inc. out of Salem, New Hampshire. Basically, the request, we met with the, I believe the Planning and Development Committee September 21st. A number of the members were present at that meeting. Basically, Energy North is looking to redevelop their existing gas station site located at 65 through 73 Essex Ave. Currently, there's a service station on the left side of the property with used car sales. Center of the property, there's a canopy that houses 5 dispensers, fueling for vehicles, and a small convenience store right behind the canopy. And to the right, there's a parking lot. The proposal is to basically take that entire site, redevelop it into a newer state-of-the-art facility. There would be a 4,500 square foot, 2-story building proposed on the right side of the property. In the center, we would have a new retail fuel canopy with inline dispensers. So as you're facing the site, you would see 4 across, left to right, and then all the way to the left where the.
Go ahead.
I could share my screen, but
No, it's okay. I just wanted to make sure Councilor O'Hara was on this because it's a public hearing, and I know that, and he's back and he's online. So great, we're good. Continue. Okay. Sorry to interrupt you.
No problem. And then to the left, where the existing service garage is, would be 2 underground fuel storage tanks that we're looking for the storage for. Currently on the site, there are 4 existing tanks that were installed in the early to late 80s. One was installed in 83, and 3 of the tanks were installed in 88. Those are double wall steel tanks, and they are, they're older. They're, 40, we're going on 40 years for one of them, and 34 years, 36 years for the others. Older double wall steel tanks that have to be cathodically protected, and it's just, older technology. The tanks aren't really that good that are there right now. And if you've looked at, the street view, you can see, the site is in need of some, repair, basically upgrading. So basically the new tanks would be 2 20,000 gallon tanks, as indicated in the amended fuel storage license. One tank would be a 20,000 gallon single compartment tank. And then the other one is a 20,000 gallon 3 compartment tank that would house 6,000 in the end compartments, and then the base tank in the middle would house 8,000 gallons of the premium. So this tank, these tanks that we're proposing are double wall fiberglass that are interstitially monitored. So just picture like a cardboard box, but obviously, not a cardboard box that we're putting in the ground. So there's an interstitial, the honeycomb space that's monitored continuously. There's a brine fluid that's put in there, and it's constantly monitored. There's a reservoir on top of the tank, and that reservoir is filled up. And if there's any breach, inside or outside, of the tank, that reservoir goes, that alarm goes off, and the store is, they acknowledge that there's an issue with the brine. In the years that I've been doing this, we haven't really seen any of the newer double wall fiberglass tanks have this, have the issues that the older steel tanks have. The piping that's proposed is from the tanks. So we have the tanks, we have sumps that are on the tanks for each compartment. And then the pumps are located within those sumps. And those sumps are also monitored. So they're fiberglass sumps, right up to grade. They're monitored. If there's any leak into the tank or out of the tank from there, those sumps are usually dry, but if there's any fuel issues with the fuel piping, the fuel piping is sloped to a monitored sump. So any issue would, get into one of these sumps and the alarm would go off. The piping that's being proposed is, again, newer double wall piping. Again, the piping is sloped from one sump to another. So when I say one sump, so the dispenser sumps are the highest point of the piping, and then all the product piping is sloped down to the tanks. And then at the dispensers, we have 4 dispensers. They would have under containment dispenser sumps as well that are under the dispensers, that when you're fueling, if there's any issue, any fuel, it would be contained in a sump. Currently, the site does not have these measures. So the tanks would be installed underground. They would be strapped down to concrete deadmen that are on both sides of both tanks. And that basically keeps the tank from floating out of the ground. So that, the tanks would be installed. Then we have about 4 feet of cover over the tanks. And then to top it off, there's an 8-inch concrete mat on top of the tanks that also helps with the buoyancy of the tanks. At the dispensers, again, it's going to be all complying with Mass DEP, US EPA regulations. The Mass State Fire Marshal also requires that the canopy has a fire suppression system, and that will be designed in accordance with their requirements as well. So again, we're beautifying the site, increasing the fuel storage. But again, fuel storage that we're increasing, we're going with the 2 20,000 gallon tanks. One of the compartments would be for a future product, be it either ethanol free, since we're close to the boating community, or maybe in the future if E15 gains ground, there's that ability to add those products to the station. With that, I'll open it up to you. I can go on and on if you want, but I'll
Okay,
open it
no,
up.
I think that's helpful. Thank you, Hussein. Is there anyone else on the call that would like to speak in favor? I see Lisa Rigsby, your hand is up. Madam Clerk, would you bring her in? LJ? Lisa, would you introduce yourself and your address? And you have 3 minutes to talk.
Hi, Lisa Rigsby, 3 Taylor Court. I wasn't actually intending to speak in favor or against. I was curious to know what the upgrade process was and wondering if you could speak a little to that. How does that happen? And how do you get the old tanks out without, is there any risk to the environment as far as leakage, potential contamination? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. We can cover that in council questions, which comes later in the public comment, but thank you for participating. Anyone else like to speak in favor? Seeing none, anyone like to speak in opposition? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, are there any correspondences or communications?
The council is in receipt of a communication from Deputy Chief, Fire Deputy Chief Barry Apt. He and I'm looking at a communication now. He and Tom are both available to attend this city council meeting, but they did want to convey that as far as the plans, everything is good to go. The state fire marshal hasn't told them of any issues via the compliance office, and the process will be overseen by the fire department through the entire process. And that if the council has any questions or concerns, they should reach out to the fire department.
Thank you. And at the beginning of that, of your reading, I just wanted to be clear that both members of the fire department are at a seminar this evening and they weren't able to attend, and they had hoped to do that, but they were not, and that was included in the letter. So thank you, Madam Clerk. Any other correspondences?
No.
Okay, thank you. So let's open it up for council questions. And I will answer the first on behalf of Lisa Rigsby. And it was, you say maybe you can tell us if you could quickly upgrade, what is the process of upgrading the new tanks and in respect to the environment? If you could explain that, that would be great.
So the existing tanks would be removed in accordance with the Mass DEP requirements. So I believe with the fire department, they would probably need to submit some sort of removal permit. There would be a licensed site professional, so an environmental engineer would be on site observing the soils that are around the tank.
Mm-hmm.
And if there is any contamination, those soils would have to be dealt with in accordance with the rules that the state has. Piping, same thing, piping, all that would be removed, and anything around any of the UST system, so the underground storage tank system, would have to be reviewed by a licensed site professional.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions, councilors? Councilor Grow, then Councilor Memard.
Thank you. Mr. Savinchel, could you speak a little bit about the age of the current tanks, and also about what the benefit is to having the fiberglass tanks, especially as they relate to the area there, which is very heavily influenced by salt water? Are we looking at a massive safety upgrade, or at least an environmental upgrade in that regard?
So the existing tanks, again, are double wall steel tanks. I don't know what the status of those tanks are. I'm assuming they're tested out annually. But again, the fiberglass is what the industry has been using. We've done projects along the coast, up in, Maine. We've done it right along in Portland. We've done these fiberglass tanks in Florida, Fort Lauderdale, right near the water. We're doing one currently in Pensacola for another client, not this client. Sorry, they're on. But so these tanks are industry standard. They're used pretty much everywhere. The fiberglass is a good tank. I personally feel that it's better than the double wall steel tanks. And those double wall steel tanks are still being used in some municipalities. But we exclusively try to get the double wall fiberglass tanks in. And again, the tanks are watertight, right? Watertight, liquid tight. No fluid should be coming in or out of these tanks. And another thing to note too. So the concern with maybe gasoline getting out of the tank. So the existing tanks are there. They've been there since, like I said, 1983 on one of the tanks, and then 88 on the 3 remaining tanks. I don't know of any issues that they've had out there in the last 35 to 40 years. So that tells me that the double wall tanks were adequate, obviously, but the double wall fiberglass are, I feel, better tanks to be used. And again, they will be, again, there's one other thing that Massachusetts has that some of the surrounding states don't require. Mass has an enhanced vapor recovery requirement. So when you're filling a tank, when the trucker, I guess, is filling a tank, those vapors that come out, they're filling the tank with the gasoline or the diesel. The vapors that are created in that tank have to be dealt with, right? So they come out sometimes, they come out back into the tanker, and then there are vents that are also placed on the site that allows some of that vapor to go out, and the entire tank top has to be basically enhanced. So no vapors can come out of the fill pipe, the vapor pipe. There's a tank level probe that's also on top of the tank that monitors the amount of gas product in the tank. So there's no vapors coming out of that. So that would mean that there's no vapor or liquid coming out of those. So that's one benefit that Massachusetts has as opposed to some of the other states around. I don't know if I answered the question.
That's fine. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I think Council Memard and then Council O'Hara for questions.
Thank you very much. Welcome to Gloucester, and this upgrade and all that's going to entail is certainly a great improvement and economic boost that part of the community. I know we're looking specifically here at the tanks, and I just wanted, while we're upgrading existing long-term tanks, I just want to make sure that we all recognize that this is a sensitive wetland filled tideland marsh, and these tanks and the area that services the tanks is, as we all are aware ourselves, subject to periodic submersion and flooding. The whole that section of Essex Avenue floods, although to the depth of a foot or so, sometimes more probably in the future. And I just want to make sure that your engineering is taking appropriate steps to address that in, again, the sensitive wetland environment. Thank you.
Yes, correct. So I failed to mention that we have gone through the local approval process, Planning Board, Conservation Commission, MIPA. So MIPA, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that, but we've gone through that process, those processes as well. So this is our kind of the last step in the process to get this fuel storage license. The flood, so we're aware that the area floods. As I mentioned earlier, the enhanced vapor recovery kind of helps, right? Even if we didn't have the enhanced vapor recovery, we design a lot of our sites with all the enhanced vapor recovery parts and pieces. So it allows, so on top of the tank, there's a fill pipe that comes up to a manhole. There's a vaporizer that comes up to a manhole, and then there's a probe that comes up to a manhole. On some of the tanks, the split tank will have those probes located within the tank sump. So everything's within a contained riser or a sump. The manholes themselves are double wall. The fill and vapor manholes are double wall. Again, the covers on the fill risers, everything's vapor tight. So vapor tight, nothing comes in or out, which means no fuel or water comes in or out. The tank sumps, the 4 tank sumps are fiberglass, and they have a watertight lid on top of the sump. And then at that grade, there's a manhole. So that manhole just gives you access to the watertight sump, basically. So a lot of the components are watertight. So fluid will not go into the tank, which we don't want. And obviously we don't want gasoline or diesel coming out of it.
Thank you. Counselor O'Hara, I believe, had his hand up to ask a question. Counselor O'Hara, I think you're having technical challenges. Are you there? Do you want to ask your question?
Yeah. Yes, thank you. I was just curious, how will you handle the dewatering of the site during installation? Just looking at the drawings, you have the dead men being placed in crushed stone. I don't know what the invert elevation of the bottom is, but as Councilor Memard mentioned, it's filled marshland, so you're dealing with the Atlantic Ocean.
Sorry, I was on mute. So the tanks will be so from the top of the tank to the grade, there's 4 to 4.5 feet, and then the tanks themselves are 10 feet. So you're looking at 16 feet to the bottom of the tank, surrounded by crushed stone that's recommended by the tank manufacturer. For the dewatering, obviously, there's water there. So they will have frac tanks on site that would pump out. Basically, during the tank installation, they shore the hole, they put in shoring, and they would be basically pumping out water to get a dry hole while they're installing these tanks. So what they do is they pump out the water into the frac tanks. The frac tanks, the water is tested, and I believe currently they have an application into the DEP to discharge the clean water right after it's cleaned out through the frac tanks back into the harbor. So that's the plan. If that does not get approved by the DEP, then those frac tanks would have to be shipped off-site and handled accordingly. So there would be frac tanks constantly coming in and out of that site to dewater the tank hole.
Thank you. Any further questions from any counselor? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing and ask for the committee report from our P&D chair, Jason Grow.
Committee recommendation on a motion by Councilor Grow, seconded by Councilor O'Neill. Planning and Development Committee voted by roll call, 3 in favor, 0 opposed, to recommend that the City Council grant Energy North Incorporated an amended license of a flammable and combustible liquids, flammable gases and solids under GCO Chapter 8 Fire Prevention and Protection, Section 8-1, quote, license for storing inflammables, Mass General Law, Chapter 148, Section 13 and 527 CMR 1.00 for storage of flammables for the property at 65 to 73 Essex Avenue, map 217, lots 20 and 22, specifically to store 26,000 gallons of gasoline regular in USD underground storage tank, 8,000 gallons of gasoline super in an underground storage tank, and 6,000 gallons of diesel retail in an underground storage tank, and I so move.
Second. Motion's made by Council Gross, seconded by Council Gilman.
As far as the narrative is concerned, basically we pretty much covered exactly what we covered tonight. We discussed the environmental concerns. Both Deputy Chief Apt and Lieutenant Sayas weighed in on their effective lack of concern. That we feel that their concerns, any concerns they have been addressed, and they will be on site during the installation of the tanks for inspections. And beyond that, it's fairly straightforward. To me, that it's actually probably a beneficial thing in terms of changing over from metal gas tanks in that area to fiberglass. But I'm not an expert. I'm just I feel like we should go ahead and support this, and that's it.
Thank you, Counselor. Any further discussion, counselors? Seeing none, roll call vote. Counselor Worthley,
Yes.
Counselor Gilman, yes. Counselor Gross,
Yes.
Counselor Grow,
Yes.
Counselor Majota,
Yes.
Counselor Memard,
Yes.
Counselor Nolan,
Yes.
Counselor O'Hara,
Yes.
Counselor O'Neill is absent. The yeses have it, 8 in favor, 1 absent. Next order of business.
Thank you very
Madam.
much.
Thank you so
Have a good
much
night.
for being here, for your entire team. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Right.
The next order is for council vote, the warrant for the November 8th, 2022 state election.
Would someone like to move to adopt?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
So moved by Counselor Worthley and seconded by Counselor Grow, I believe.
Yep.
I wasn't looking at the faces. I was just listening to your voices. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Counselor Worthley,
Yes.
Counselor Gilman, yes. Counselor Gross,
Yes.
Counselor Grow,
Yes.
Counselor Majota,
Yes.
Counselor Memhard,
Yes.
Counselor Nolan,
Yes.
Counselor O'Hara,
Yes.
Counselor O'Neill is absent. The motion passes 8 in favor, 1 absent. Next order of business, Madam Clerk.
That is councilors' request to the mayor.
Thank you. We'll start with Counselor Worthley because he's first on the roll call tonight.
Finally, this happens when you have a W with the last name. It takes about 3 months before you're back around, longer before you get to be first. I have a couple of requests to the mayor, some I've submitted and some I could talk about, but I have a few announcements if I could, if you could indulge me for a few minutes. Yes?
Go ahead.
So firstly, and most importantly, I think, Councilor Gilman and Gross were there this morning in honor of a lot of positive things through the open door, but specifically Tony Gross won a Volunteer of the Year award, and I just want to make sure we all know that, congratulate him and thank him for what he's done. Really is admirable. Thank you, Tony. No, it's a fantastic organization. I think, as everyone knows, they're doing a big fundraising effort right now. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, sorry.
Going.
We're continuing to applaud Counselor Gross because we're so
Okay.
proud of him.
I see hands in the air, but I can't hear it any longer. As we know, there's a $35,000 matching donation. If we can continue to raise money, I'm not sure how long that's going to continue to last, but I know that there are a couple who are very much involved with the open doors. Maybe they can comment that today. But it was a fantastic event. The need is so strong and the support is so strong. So I just wanted to commend everybody for that. I want to make note that we are fast approaching our 50% mark in our council year. By this time next year, there'll be ballots, there'll be candidates, and some of us will be here, some of us won't. And I would love to try to do some sort of goal setting to see what we do for the next half of our term. I'm not sure how that's done. I'd like to throw that out there as something for discussion at some point. Councilor Margiotta and I are going to attempt finally, not finally for us, finally for the city, to solve some traffic problems on Centennial Ave and Washington Street. And we've got the traffic commission ready to roll, and we've sent some messages to the chiefs, and we're trying to work through that process. But I don't want to sound like Bruce Tolley, but stay tuned. There's some things coming at some point on that. I have a relatively serious one to discuss.
Counselor, we
Yes.
can't discuss things that aren't in the agenda, so I'm sorry about that. But if you want to tell us what your request is, that's okay.
Okay. So I think we all know, and if we don't know, that there's the Gloucester Healthcare facility on Washington Street has announced that they'll be closing likely by the end of the year, displacing 41 beds. And we haven't talked about it. It's not a government organization. There's not a lot we can do regarding private business. But it's a concern. It's a concern I raise. I don't have a solution. I want to throw out there for a future discussion. In 2020, we had 5,039 people over 70 years old. And we're projected in 2030 to have 43% increase, 7,200. I think it's alarming. A lot of it, though, is got to do with financing and labor market and things that Medicaid doesn't cover. But if there's something we can do as a council, the mayor's office can do either job fair related or working to incent them. You know, in 2004, Mayor Bell insisted this council support Sam Park's project. And I don't want to speak negatively about him, but this council voted for a permit that included an assisted living facility. And then in 2009, Mayor Kirk negotiated a tax incremental financing, and the quote from Mr. Park simply was, without the $2.4 million tax break, he wouldn't be able to build an assisted living facility. And here we are. Again, not sure what the solution is, but I think it's something that we should be having some conversation about, at least in terms of the need of the city. The last thing for me is, as Councilor Memhard said, there is a public hearing in 2 weeks on the library loan, $29 million that the mayor has submitted to the council for approval. We had a very robust and rigorous budget and finance meeting last week. And I think it would be helpful. I know everyone does their best to stay up to speed on all the committee work, but if Assistant City Clerk Grace could send a link to the Zoom meeting to remind people. I thought it was very informative. I asked lots of questions. Councilor Gross did, Councilor Memhard did, and we got a lot of good answers. And to save some time and energy at the full council level, it might be valuable to get up to speed, just as a recommendation. So aside from that, it wasn't necessarily much request to the mayor. I appreciate your time. Thank you for a good meeting.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Gross.
No, I'm good.
Councilor Grow.
No, I've got nothing except to add my congratulations to Tony for his good work at the Open Door, and you know, seeing you there all the time is pretty awesome, I have to say.
Thank you. Councilor Majota.
Yes, I do have one request to the mayor, and I did want to do the congratulations for Tony, but Jeff beat me to it. So Tony, awesome work, and I love seeing you at the Open Door. My request to the mayor's office is to be able to look at Governor's Park. There has been graffiti there, and open liquor bottles, and some unwanted visitors, and the people there have been feeling unsafe. Especially for children playing, and the graffiti is vulgar and inappropriate. So I just don't know how to work with the cleanup of that, and to see what we can do to make Governor Park, you know, a place where people are able to bring their families and enjoy. It's a great park. If you've never been there, it's small, but it's a great open area for that area around that park.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Memhard.
Yes, I have one request, which comes from constituents in East Gloucester who are watching the progress of the Mount Pleasant Avenue sewer and water infrastructure reconstruction that will be followed by repaving. And they're just sensitive to the loss of trees. And there are some signage on Mount Pleasant that recognizes Gloucester as being one of the national tree cities of USA. We are losing some trees. There's some old and dead trees along the cemetery. There's the John Alto Park. John Alto was our tree warden for many, many years at the intersection up there with Moreland. But we're just, the request and the concern of the residents in this area, in this community, is that we maintain our reputation as being a tree city and somehow allocate the resources and the planning to reconstitute some of the lost trees that are very stately and pleasant along Mount Pleasant as part of this, as they are winding up their roadwork and infrastructure project over the next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Nolan.
Yeah, I want to thank Tony for all his work with the Open Door, as well as the Open Door and all their employees and volunteers, which we have a few on this call right here I can look at. Secondly, I want to thank the Magnolia Library and the Magnolia's Farmers Market for a wonderful time on Lexington Avenue. It was a great community event, and all had a good time. And I can't thank you enough for all the hard work and dedication.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor O'Hara.
Thank you. I'm all set.
Thank you. And I'm the last, and I just have two quick things. Council Majota, I would suggest that you speak to our police chief, and you can also tie in Sheriff Kevin Copinger, who has offered to help us with any graffiti removal. That's something that Councilor Nolan hosted a get together to talk about the things he can do for us. And that was one of them. And I think Council Worthley had some success with getting him to do some of that as well. So that's just a head start on your order.
Thank you.
And if you need any of those phone numbers, I can help you with getting in touch with him.
Okay.
And I just want to mirror what everyone said. Today's open door event was just fabulous, and it was heartfelt. And the folks that got awards, in addition to Tony Gross, a woman named Grace Hamdora, Tony. She got the same award, the Helen Muse Award, but she was representing Second Glance, Tony the Open Door, and it was just really heartfelt. And then Mark Nicastro won the Charlotte Pope Award. That's Jonathan Pope's mom award in her memory, which is pretty cool. And then the Ipswich Chamber of the Ipswich Open YMCA won the Outstanding Community Partner. And it was just a great event. So I'm proud of all the counselors who have been affiliated, and more importantly, just the passion that this whole community has for the open door. It's fabulous. So I have nothing. Oh, go ahead, Tony Gross. You'd like to speak? Would you like
Can you indulge me for a moment?
With us all taking pictures of you today?
I'd like to thank everybody for your heartfelt thanks, but it's really the open door is the place to be celebrated. I'm just privileged to be able to go in there a few times a week and put in a couple hours with some really outstanding people, both volunteers and the staff that are there. And I had a great pleasure to sit next to Grace today, the other awardee from the Second Glance. And if you get a chance to go to the Second Glance, she's a hoot, have a little chat with her. It will brighten your day. So I just wanted to say that Grace was quite a pleasure to sit with today and to be honored with. So thank you all.
Thank you. So before we make a motion to adjourn, just a kudo to Kenny Costa, who's still here, our auditor. Thank you, Kenny, and also to our Director of Constituent and Communication Services, Pam Toby. Oh, thank you for very much for sticking with us. Some of these meetings are longer than we all hope sometimes, and sometimes they're short and whatever, but we appreciate your dedication to both of you, so thank you. And thank you, Assistant City Clerk Grace, for filling in tonight. You did a great job, and much appreciated. So is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay. Roll call vote. Council Worthley.
Yes.
Council Gilman. Yes. Council Gross.
Yes.
Council Grow.
Yes.
Council Majota.
Yes.
Council Memhard.
Reluctantly, but yes.
Council Nolan.
Yes.
Council O'Hara.
Yes.
The motions are in favor, 8 in favor, no one opposed to adjourn the meeting. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Until we meet
Good night.
again.